I never thought I'd find love again. Not after being crushed by betrayal from the woman I once believed was my soulmate. Life, however, has a knack for catching you off guard, especially when you least expect it. This is the story of how I transitioned from a bitter, angry divorce to finding redemption in the most unexpected way. It's a tale of deceit and heartbreak that spiraled into something I never saw coming. A shocking twist involving a woman half my age. But to truly understand how I ended up in bed with this young woman, completely unaware of the scandalous connection between us, we have to rewind. Back to when I thought I had everything figured out. Life was smooth for a couple of years, maybe even better than the early honeymoon phase. Lisa seemed happy, or so I thought, but she never seemed fully satisfied. She started going on about all these high-end things she wanted, stuff our modest paychecks could never cover. She'd often pester me about whether my dad, who she assumed was wealthy because of his stake in a car dealership, could pitch in more to support us. When I suggested starting a family, she shot it down immediately. She insisted on waiting until we were financially set before even thinking about kids. Her grand plan included quitting her job to become a full-time mom, but only when we were rolling in money. We'd been married for nearly 2 years when everything fell apart. My dad unexpectedly passed away from a heart attack while at work. I was in the middle of selling used cars when I heard commotion coming from the service area. I rushed over just in time to see my dad collapse and take his final breath, right before the paramedics arrived. Losing him devastated me. After my mom's passing, he had been my anchor. My sister, Claire, had just graduated from college a month earlier and was staying at home while job hunting. She struggled with the loss too, though she's always been tougher than I am. Lisa was supportive at first, helping with the funeral preparations and sticking around for a few days afterward. She didn't cry like Claire and I did, but she was present. Once the dust settled, though, her true priorities surfaced. She started pressing me about Dad's will and when it would be read. It infuriated me, and I told her to drop it, but she didn't. About 2 weeks after Dad passed, Claire, Lisa, and I, along with a couple of out-of-town relatives, attended the will reading. We were all shocked to learn that Dad's stake in the dealership was a mere 3%, and he had a second mortgage on the house. Apparently, he'd used the mortgage funds to buy into the dealership. By the time his share was sold off to the majority owner, at a price we had no leverage to negotiate, and the mortgage was settled, Claire and I were left with just $10,000 each. Lisa didn't say a word during the reading, but the fury in her expression was impossible to miss. That marked the end of her support and sympathy. It was as though she'd flipped a switch, and the person I once loved disappeared. She became cold, distant, and utterly detached. I tried my best to mend things, but Lisa was like ice. 3 months after the will reading, I came home to our dingy apartment to find Lisa gone and a note sitting on a pile of papers. The note was brutal. "Jack, I want kids, but you're not capable of providing the life I want for them. I'm leaving. I've taken more than half of the cash from our pathetic bank account, but I'm leaving you all the furniture. Don't try to contact me. If you need anything, talk to my lawyer. His contact is on the divorce papers under this note. Good luck, Lisa." And just like that, my life crumbled. Beneath the note was a stack of divorce papers claiming we couldn't see eye to eye anymore. What she really meant was that I wasn't the financial jackpot she hoped for, so I wasn't worth sticking around for. It became clear I'd just been her stepping stone to something better. I tried contacting her, but her lawyer made it clear she didn't want to talk. My heart was shattered. I genuinely loved her. How could I have been so blind to the fact that she never loved me back? Thankfully, Claire was still around and had found a decent job. Since I couldn't afford the apartment on my own anymore, I sold off her furniture and moved in with her for a while. If it weren't for Claire, I don't know how I'd have made it through that dark time. For 6 weeks, I simply went through the motions of living. Then, I heard through the grapevine that Lisa had moved in with a wealthy property developer. And then, as if things couldn't get worse, I found out Lisa was now sporting maternity clothes. The sight of that pushed me over the edge. I called her lawyer immediately, furious, demanding to speak with Lisa. What he told me next hit like a sledgehammer. "Actually, Mr. Easton," he began cautiously, "I was about to call you. Lisa is pregnant and plans to amend the divorce petition to request child support." I was floored. I just finalized a no-contest divorce, agreeing to split what little we had exactly as Lisa had outlined. Neither of us owed alimony. Hearing this news, though, something inside me snapped. Gone was the heartbroken nice guy. That gold-digging snake better think twice. I growled at the lawyer. You tell her this. If she dares try to get child support, I'll demand a paternity test immediately, and I'll revoke my consent for the divorce. There are ways to confirm paternity before the baby's born, and if that kid is mine, I'll pay for the test. But if it's not, she's footing the bill, and I'll be filing for divorce on grounds of adultery. Plus, I'll demand child support from her and a whole new asset split. Got it? I slammed the phone down so hard I half expected it to shatter. Unsurprisingly, I never received any official paperwork requesting child support. I knew deep down that baby wasn't mine. At that point, my love for Lisa curdled into pure, undiluted hate. By the time the divorce was finalized 2 months later, my bitterness was absolute. One night, Claire came home to find me drowning in whiskey and self-pity. I was a slurring, pathetic mess. Even in my drunken haze, I could see the fury on her face. She unloaded on me, calling me every name under the sun and demanding I get my act together. You should be glad that Viper is out of your life, she barked, referring to Lisa by her new nickname, that Viper. Then she hauled me off the couch, shoved me into the bedroom, and slammed the door. Don't come out until you sober up, you idiot, she shouted. I passed out in a miserable heap, wallowing in my self-loathing. When I woke up the next morning, I smelled bacon and eggs. Stumbling into the kitchen, I saw Claire cooking. Without looking up, she said, I called both our jobs and told them we wouldn't be in until noon. She nodded to the seat at the table and set a plate of greasy hangover food in front of me. Why? I mumbled, still groggy. Because we need to talk, she said firmly. And it'll probably take a while to get it through your thick skull. She wasn't wrong. Over the next 2 hours, Claire broke me down and then built me back up. She convinced me to move at least 500 miles away, enroll in night classes at a community college, and work on getting over Lisa, or seek professional help if I couldn't. Her no-nonsense attitude lit a fire under me, and within a month, I was gone. I relocated to a booming construction town, landed a job as a handyman, rented a cheap apartment, and signed up for community college night classes. At first, the physical labor was grueling, but I grew to enjoy the challenge. My body got stronger, and for the first time in years, I felt good about myself. Surprisingly, I also discovered that my high school teachers had been right to be disappointed in me. When I actually applied myself, I excelled. I completed associate's degrees in civil engineering and business in just 2 school years and 2 summer sessions. I didn't date during this time, though I partied occasionally and had a few casual hookups. None of them, however, made me think of Lisa. They didn't even come close to her memory. I took pride in how thoroughly I'd erased her from my mind. 2.5 years after moving, I earned a manager position at the construction company where I'd started as a laborer. The foreman and owner had recognized my potential and taken me under their wing. My paycheck was now 4 times what I'd earned when I first moved, and I'd saved a solid chunk of cash thanks to the low cost of community college. Feeling accomplished, I decided to treat myself the weekend after landing my new job. Instead of a random hookup, I arranged for an escort through an agency a friend had recommended. I chose Sophia, who looked stunning in her photos. When Sophia arrived at my place that Saturday night, I was blown away. She was even more gorgeous in person. After locking the door behind her, we exchanged brief introductions. Hi, I'm Sophia, she said, to which I replied, Hey, I'm Jack. Surprisingly, there was no awkwardness between us. What followed was 2 wild nights with her, but they brought an unexpected complication. I started thinking about Lisa again. The memories of how great my life had been back then, and how completely it had unraveled, came rushing back. Anger and hatred boiled up inside me all over again. A friend called me out for acting like a jerk, and I finally realized how deep I'd buried my emotions. Claire, ever the straight shooter, told me I needed therapy. After a year of sessions with Dr. Bennett, my therapist bluntly told me, Jack, you've got more anger than any sane person I've ever treated. Regular therapy isn't cutting it. It's going to take something drastic, a major event, to snap you out of this. 9 years after leaving my hometown, my company tapped me to open a new branch there. It felt surreal, going back to a place that held so many memories. Clara kept tabs on Lisa and filled me in. She'd dumped the sleazy realtor who'd stolen her from me, had another kid, and was now married to some hedge fund manager. I rented a car at the airport and started scouting locations for the branch. Everything felt strange with all the changes in town. About 20 miles in, I got a flat tire. I changed it myself, tossed a lug wrench on the floor, and kept driving. Stopping at a red light near a fancy private school, I noticed 3 little girls in uniforms heading toward a limo. The driver held the door open for them, but before they could climb in, a black SUV screeched to a halt nearby. 3 men jumped out, knocked the driver unconscious, and grabbed the screaming children, their backpacks flying everywhere. Within seconds, the kidnappers had stuffed the girls into their SUV and sped off. I didn't hesitate. I floored it through the red light, swerving around a car in the intersection, and rammed the SUV with my rental car. The collision deployed my airbag, and theirs. Their driver hadn't buckled up, and he was groaning in pain as the airbag deflated. Adrenaline coursing through me, I grabbed the lug wrench, unbuckled, and bolted out of my car. The SUV had come to a halt, and chaos erupted. One guy staggered out of the back seat with a gun, but he was disoriented. Before he could aim, I closed the distance and slammed the wrench across his head. He crumpled to the ground. A second thug climbed out with a knife and grabbed one of the terrified little girls, holding the blade to her throat. "Drop your weapon," he barked. I didn't flinch. Locking eyes with him, I spoke slowly and clearly. "If you let the girl go, I'll let you walk away. But you're not leaving here with her. And if you hurt her, I'll make sure you regret it before you die. You've got 10 seconds to decide. Then I'm coming for you." I raised my left hand and glanced at my watch. 1, 2, I counted deliberately. When I reached 6, he shoved the crying girl aside and bolted. Without thinking, I hurled the wrench at him. It struck him square in the back of the head, and he went down. Jogging over, I planted my knee on his back and yelled to the shocked bystanders at the school to call 911. Someone already had, because the police arrived less than 2 minutes later. By the time they showed up, 2 male teachers were pinning the SUV driver to the ground, and a group of parents or staff were comforting the girls. The cops quickly cuffed the 3 kidnappers, all of whom were loaded into ambulances. I barely noticed the blood streaming down my arm until someone pointed out that I'd been shot. The paramedics treated my gunshot wound as I gave my statement to the police lieutenant. Apparently, the guy who'd pulled the gun on me was in critical condition, while the others had non-life-threatening injuries. The limo driver, though shaken, was also treated on the scene. As the ambulances pulled away and the cops finished questioning me, I heard frantic crying. A woman's voice pierced the chaos, screaming, "Mommy! Mommy!" Turning, I saw her, a hysterical woman sprinting toward the girls. My breath caught in my throat. It was Lisa. Her eyes landed on me, and her expression shifted from shock to unbridled fury. She charged at me, screaming, "You bastard, Jack. I know you had something to do with this. You kidnapped my girls to get back at me, didn't you? You piece of—" Before I could respond, she attacked, swinging her purse at me like a weapon. A police officer restrained her, explaining that I had saved her children. But Lisa kept hurling insults and curses my way, even as the girls clung to her in tears. I watched her, numb, as I was led away to finalize my statement. I insisted it be videotaped for accuracy, and the cops verified my story with my rental car. When they asked me to stick around longer, I refused, unless they planned to arrest me. And as for Lisa, I demanded they issue an assault warrant for her attack. Lisa's assault on me sparked a whirlwind of events. Threatening media involvement if denied her chance to meet me, she tried to manipulate the narrative. Thankfully, Claire came to pick me up while I stayed under the radar. The kidnapping story was everywhere on the news, but the media hadn't yet tracked me down. That night, I consulted a lawyer about pressing charges against Lisa for slander and assault and checked to confirm her arrest status. Then everything shifted. A local TV station aired security footage showing my face as paramedics treated me. They praised my bravery, and before I knew it, I became recognizable everywhere. Reporters managed to find me, and while I gave a few short interviews, I downplayed my role in the rescue. Out of the blue, Lisa found a way to contact Claire. She left a voicemail, trying to apologize and asking to meet. I told Claire to delete the message and warned her to tell Lisa to back off if she called again. Meanwhile, my new lawyer was relentless. He filed the paperwork to sue Lisa for slander and assault and kept pressuring the prosecutor's office to move forward with her case. Flying home, I couldn't help but feel smug. Instead of dwelling on saving those kids, my thoughts kept circling back to how satisfying it was to make Lisa squirm. At the office, my colleagues greeted me like a hero, showering me with congratulations not only for my bravery, but also for the excellent properties I'd scouted. My bosses even treated me to a luxurious lunch to celebrate my newfound celebrity status. Later that day, I received a call from David Sinclair, the billionaire whose granddaughter, Sophie, I had saved. David thanked me profusely, offering his help with anything I might need in the future. He also assured me he'd already handled the situation with my totaled rental car. True to his word, I got a call from Margaret Hall, the president of the rental company. She assured me I wouldn't be charged for the damage, refunded my rental fee, and even apologized profusely. Mr. Sinclair owns the company, she explained, but honestly, we would have done the same regardless. Meanwhile, Claire told me Lisa had continued trying to contact her. Frustrated, Claire finally answered one of her calls and lashed out, threatening Lisa with harassment charges if she didn't stop. Lisa then redirected her efforts toward my attorney, requesting a meeting. My lawyer, however, insisted that all communication would remain formal and through legal channels. Though I was savoring the pressure I was putting on Lisa, the legal battle wasn't cheap. My attorney informed me that I'd need to show up for a deposition, and Lisa had the right to attend as well, though he reassured me she wouldn't be able to speak to me directly. I was in the middle of figuring out my schedule when my secretary walked in with a message. "Mr. Sinclair is on the line for you," she said, practically giddy. I straightened up. "Hey, David, what's up?" I asked casually. "Jack, how are you doing?" he replied warmly. "Great, David. And you?" I said, then hesitated. "Well, aside from my legal mess with my ex-wife, it's going well, but the costs are starting to add up. I've got a plan for a deposition soon, and was just working out dates." David chuckled. "Funny timing, Jack. I'm calling about something that might help. The mayor is organizing a ceremony to present you with the City Hero of the Year award. It could coincide with your deposition, and I'm sure the city would cover your travel expenses." I paused. "David, I appreciate that, but I'm not big on publicity. I've already turned down dozens of interview requests, even from 60 Minutes. Plus, I doubt the city would foot my bill for this." He laughed. "Fair point. Here's the thing, though. It's not just about the award. Sophie wants to make a public speech to thank you. She's been insistent, and I think it'll really help her process and heal. So I'm asking, Jack, for her sake. David, I don't want to let you or Sophie down," I said honestly, "but public attention makes me really uncomfortable." "I get it," he said, cutting me off. "But listen, if you come, I'll not only cover your travel expenses, but also your attorney's fees for the lawsuit against your ex-wife. Plus, I'll owe you double. And trust me, Jack, you'll find having me in your debt very advantageous." I sat in stunned silence, mulling it over. After a long pause, David broke the silence. "You still there, Jack?" "Sorry, David. I was just thinking, you've made it impossible to say no, but you really don't have to pay for my legal fees." "Jack," David said firmly, "I insist. I don't like the way she's treating you. I wasn't aware you'd filed a lawsuit, but now that I know, I want to help. My secretary will coordinate with your attorney to cover the expenses. She'll also provide the potential dates for the ceremony. Looking forward to seeing you." "Thanks, David," I replied cheerfully. Life was finally looking up. When my lawyer called later that day, he sounded like the happiest person alive. "Jack, you're not going to believe this. David Sinclair's covering all your legal fees. His attorney called and said to spare no expense. I swear, I think your legal costs just double." "No doubt," I replied, laughing. The day before the ceremony, I attended my deposition at my lawyer's office. As expected, Lisa was there. She kept trying to talk to me, But I stayed resolute, responding with childish antics like covering my ears with my hands while my attorney politely asked hers to keep her quiet. When Lisa tried again, my lawyer had enough. "If your client speaks to mine one more time," he told opposing counsel firmly, "I will end this deposition immediately, and you can explain to the judge why it should resume under these conditions." Lisa left the room in tears. I grinned like a kid who just won a candy jar. The ceremony itself was awkward at first, but it turned into a truly memorable event. Meeting David in person was incredible. He was warm, charismatic, and genuine. His granddaughter, Sophie, gave a heartfelt thank you speech that melted my heart and brought tears to my eyes. It was the most adorable thing I'd ever witnessed. Everything was perfect until the end. As I wrapped up a conversation with the mayor, I turned to leave and froze. Standing there, right in front of me, were Lisa, her second husband, and her current husband, Kevin Ashton. I hadn't even realized they were there. Lisa blurted out, "Jack, I just want to thank you for saving my girls." I cut her off sharply, lowering my voice but making sure she felt the venom in my words. "Screw you, Lisa. If I'd known they were your kids, I wouldn't have saved them." Then I turned and walked away, feeling smug and satisfied that I'd said the cruelest thing possible to her. But that feeling evaporated when I caught sight of her daughters, Elizabeth and Jamie, standing off to the side. Their young faces, filled with shock and sadness, told me they'd heard every word. A pang of guilt hit me like a brick to the chest. They were innocent in all of this, and what I said wasn't even true. It was just a weapon aimed to hurt Lisa. For days, I couldn't stop thinking about those girls and how to make it right. For days later, my lawyer called with updates. "Good news, Jack," he began. "First, the judge ruled we can present evidence in our damages report about how Lisa left you with another man's baby. That's a huge win for us. Second, there's a settlement offer, $500,000 to drop both cases against her." I grinned. "Sounds great, but I have a counteroffer." I instructed my lawyer to demand Lisa admit publicly that her defamatory statements about me were false, agree to a face-to-face meeting between me and her daughters, and allow for yearly private talks with the girls mediated by my lawyer until they turned 18. My lawyer chuckled. "I don't know what you're up to, Jack, but I'll make it happen." 2 hours later, Lisa's team agreed to the terms. I called David, needing his help. "David, I owe you twice over, but I need one more favor," I said, explaining my plan and requesting $400,000 to smooth things over. David laughed warmly. "Jack, you're even better than I thought. My assistant will wire the money to your business attorney. And don't worry, this doesn't count as one of my 2 favors." The day of the meeting arrived. Lisa and Kevin watched nervously as her daughters, Elizabeth and Jamie, ages 9 and 7, were escorted into an empty jury room. Smiling warmly, I knelt down to their level, shook their hands, and performed a card trick I'd been practicing to break the ice. The girls giggled, and the tension lifted. "I wanted to meet you both face to face," I began gently. "I'm really proud I got to help you that day with those bad men. But I know you heard me say something hurtful to your mom, and it wasn't true. I said it out of anger, but it was wrong, and I want to make it right." Elizabeth tilted her head and asked softly, "Isn't that what you meant when you said you wouldn't have saved us if you knew who our mom was?" No. That's not what I meant at all," I said quickly, smiling to reassure her. "You two are amazing, wonderful kids, and I'd be proud to help you anytime, no matter who your parents are. The truth is, I don't like your mom very much because of things she did to me a long time ago. I said something I shouldn't have, just to hurt her, but it was wrong. And I want you both to know, I'd give my life to save you again if I had to." "Why don't you like our mom?" Elizabeth asked, brushing back her strawberry blonde hair, which had fallen over one of her bright, sparkling blue eyes. "It's nothing you need to worry about," I replied warmly. "It's between your mom and me, and it has absolutely nothing to do with either of you." That seemed to satisfy her, and from there, the conversation flowed naturally. Time flew by, and soon the 15 minutes were up. I turned to Lisa's lawyer and asked for 5 more minutes. To my surprise, he agreed. "Girls," I said, turning back to Elizabeth and Jamie, "I want to show you how happy I am that I got to help you. So, I'm giving you both a gift." I reached into my bag and handed each of them a business card. "This is for Mr. Ames, my attorney. I've set aside enough money so that both of you can pay for college, no matter what happens with your parents. If you ever need money for school, tuition, books, anything, just call him and he'll take care of it." Elizabeth's eyes widened. "My friend Sophie told me college costs a ton of money," she said. "It sure does," I said with a smile. "And that's why I'm making sure you'll be able to go, no matter what." Both girls hugged me tightly, and Jamie even kissed my cheek. Elizabeth's eyes glistened with tears as she pulled back. "One more thing," I added, reaching into my pocket again. I pulled out 3 identical multicolored plastic rings. "These are friendship rings. I've already given one to Sophie, and now you each get one too. These rings mean that we'll always have a special connection, because I got to help you, and you've given me more joy than I could ever imagine by letting me do so." I slipped the oversized rings onto the ring fingers of their small right hands, keeping the third for myself, which I placed on my pinky. The girls beamed, gave me another hug and kiss, and then left the room, their smiles as bright as the rings on their hands. After they left, Lisa's lawyer looked stunned. He stared at the paperwork I'd handed over, detailing the trust agreements I'd set up, $200,000 for each girl, to double in 10 years, with the remainder left for them upon college graduation. He was speechless. I stayed in the jury room for a few extra minutes with my attorney, catching my breath. When we walked out, it was clear that Lisa's lawyer had explained everything to her and Kevin. Lisa was sobbing uncontrollably, looking like she was on the verge of passing out. To a normal person, it might have seemed like she was overwhelmed by my generosity and touched by how much I cared for her children despite my hatred for her. Whether that was genuine or not, I'll never know. I simply waved goodbye to Elizabeth and Jamie and walked away. 12 years passed. Just after my 42nd birthday, I moved back to my hometown. My therapist had long since declared my anger and hatred toward Lisa under control, but I still hadn't been in a serious relationship. It bugged her, but she had no concrete advice other than waiting for some lucky break to come along. For the past 11 years, I'd been working on special projects for David Sinclair. He treated me well, and I was on the verge of becoming wealthy in my own right. Now David was encouraging me to open a new business for him in my hometown. The timing felt right. I no longer feared running into Lisa, and it meant I'd get to see Claire, her husband Jeff, and their 2 awesome kids, ages 11 and 9, far more often. As part of the process of setting up the new business, I hired a PR firm. They assigned me a young woman named Betsy Dentino. At first, I was skeptical. Betsy was only 22, fresh out of college, and I wasn't thrilled that they'd put someone so inexperienced on my account. The firm's president assured me she was their best, promising to replace her if I wasn't happy. When I finally met Betsy, I was stunned. There was something familiar about her, but I knew I couldn't have met anyone quite like her before. She was, without exaggeration, the most gorgeous woman I'd ever seen in person, aside from Lisa and Sophia. Her long blonde hair shimmered like gold. Her sparkling blue eyes could pierce through any darkness, and her cute upturned nose paired perfectly with her full lips. Her figure looked like it had been plucked straight out of a Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. And her personality? She was the embodiment of bubbly and friendly. Betsy wasn't just a pretty face. She was a hard worker with sharp, creative ideas that blew me away. I found myself spending more time with her than I probably should have, captivated by her enthusiasm and energy. Her habit of lightly touching my arm when she laughed nearly drove me crazy. It was electric. Thanks to her PR efforts, the business launched with a bang. Still, almost every day, I'd find myself wondering why I couldn't have met someone like Betsy when I was 21. When her 3-month contract with the PR firm ended, I felt a pang of sadness. I would have loved to keep her on, but her firm had other assignments lined up, and I couldn't justify keeping her on without a business reason, especially not if David asked. As we said our goodbyes in my office, Betsy rocked my world. She looked me straight in the eye and said with a mischievous smile, "Now that I'm not working for you anymore, how about you take me out for dinner and a show?" I stammered, caught completely off guard. Before I could formulate a proper response, she leaned in, hugged me tightly, and whispered in my ear, "Call me, or I'll haunt you." She slipped a folded piece of paper into my hand before pulling back with a playful smile. That evening, I found myself at Claire's house for dinner. The kids were thrilled to see me, especially after I handed them the gifts I'd brought. "Stop spoiling them," Claire scolded, but her laughter betrayed how much she enjoyed watching her kids' excitement. After dinner, with Jeff putting the kids to bed, Claire and I sat in the living room. "What's up, Jack?" "I know that look. You want to talk," she said, taking my hand. I trusted Claire more than anyone else in the world. She was the only person I could be completely honest with, and I knew she'd always give me the blunt truth. I told her everything about Betsy, how stunning she was, how much I enjoyed working with her, and what she'd said to me. I even showed Claire the piece of paper with Betsy's number and the little heart she'd drawn on it. Claire studied the photo of Betsy I'd shown her. "I swear I've seen this woman somewhere, but I can't place her," she said, looking puzzled. "She's obviously a 10 in the looks department, and her personality seems just as stunning." Then I asked the question that had been eating at me. "Claire, be honest. Do you think it's possible she's actually into me? I'm more than 20 years older than her, and she could probably have any guy she wanted." Claire looked at me intently, her expression serious. "Jack, you're a good-looking guy, you're in great shape, and let's not forget, you're loaded. It's possible she's into you. Sure, the odds might not be 50 to 50, but if you don't try, you're an idiot. Just keep your expectations realistic, okay?" Grinning, I pulled Claire to her feet, giving her a big hug and kiss on the cheek. "Claire, you're the best. Thanks for the grub, but I've got to make a phone call." As I left, her laughter followed me out the door. My date with Betsy that Saturday night was unforgettable. I was nervous as hell, but within 5 minutes, she had me completely at ease with her sparkling smile, dazzling eyes, and easy conversation. She wasn't shy about physical affection, touching my arm and holding my hand throughout dinner. The chemistry between us was electric, and the night only got better from there. After dinner, we went to a show where she kept holding my hand like we'd been doing it for years. On the drive back to my place, she put her hand on my thigh and murmured with a look that could melt steel, "How about we spend the night at your place?" By the time we got to my condo, there was no hesitation. We went straight to the bedroom, and that night marked the beginning of a whirlwind 14 months, the best months of my life. Betsy was vibrant, loving, and assertive. She had a confidence that was magnetic, and being with her felt like being with a goddess. She was upfront about our arrangement. Betsy reminded me occasionally that we weren't exclusive and that if she ever got engaged, what we had would end. Despite this, she gave me more love and joy than I'd ever experienced. While she sometimes went on dates or trips with others, we shared incredible moments: dinners, shows, charity events, and even a luxurious weekend getaway at one of the most expensive resorts on the East Coast. Feeling fulfilled and at peace with myself for the first time in years, I started dating casually again. I met several amazing women, some a few years younger and others a few years older than me. I enjoyed their company, but I made a conscious effort never to compare them to Betsy. It wouldn't have been fair to them or to the connection we shared. Then one Thursday night, Betsy caught me completely off guard. Sitting up in bed, she took my hands in hers and said, "We need to talk." "Okay," I replied, noticing for the first time the ring on her right pinky finger. It was too dark to make out the details. "You've heard me mention Eric before, right? You've even met him once," she said. I nodded, remembering running into Betsy and a tall, blonde man she'd introduced as Eric one Saturday night at a restaurant. Betsy occasionally mentioned him, but I hadn't given it much thought. "Sure," I said, bracing myself for what was coming next. "Well," she continued, looking me directly in the eyes, "he proposed to me. I'm in love with him, and I'm going to say yes on Monday." I felt a lump form in my throat. "If you're in love with him, why haven't you already said yes?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "Because," she replied gently, "I told you from the start that if I got engaged, our relationship would end. And before that happens, I want to have one last fling with you. I want to take you to a resort this weekend so we can properly say goodbye." I was stunned. "Wow," I managed to say after a moment. "That sounds amazing, but you don't have to pay." Betsy cut me off, shaking her head. "I'm paying. I've got plenty of cash, but before you say yes, there's something I need to tell you. She reached over and turned on the bedside lamp, holding up her right hand. The light illuminated a plastic, multicolored ring on her pinky finger. My mind raced. Before I could say anything, she spoke. "Jack," she said, her voice soft but firm, "I'm Elizabeth Ashton. Dentino is Italian for fate, and I only use it as my business name. Istea de here, Otelispitilis." My brain felt like it had short-circuited. She saw my stunned expression and kept going. "I never got the chance to properly thank you for saving my life and my sister Jamie's life. You not only saved us, you gave me a trust fund of $200,000. I became obsessed with knowing more about you." Tears welled up in her eyes, and I felt my own vision blur. "When I was a teenager, I got a transcript of your testimony from your attorney, though he swore never to tell you. Reading it and seeing how my mom treated you shocked and ashamed me. I decided then that I'd never, ever be like her, even though she loved me and did her best to raise Jamie and me." She paused, taking a shaky breath before continuing. "Jack, I decided I needed to make it up to you for how terribly she treated you. I thought I'd just have some fun with you at first, but then I realized you're an incredible man. I kept things going, partly for myself and partly to say thank you. Finally, I found my voice. You're incredible," I whispered, pulling her into a tight hug. After a moment, she gently pushed me back and wiped the tears from both our faces. "So, does this mean you'll spend the weekend with me and let me spend some of the $300,000 I have left from the trust you gave me?" she asked with a sly smile. "You've given me the greatest gift anyone could," I told her, finally regaining my composure. "You've turned my life around. There's no more hate or anger in my heart, only love and peace. I'd be honored to spend one last weekend with you, Elizabeth." That Friday through Sunday morning became the most bittersweet days of my life. I wasn't outwardly sad, though I couldn't deny that I had fallen in love with Betsy. But my happiness for her and gratitude to her outweighed any sadness I felt. True to her word, she never contacted me again after she accepted Eric's proposal. 9 months after she said yes to Eric, Betsy invited me and my fiancée, Grace, to her wedding. Grace, a widow 2 years younger than me, ran the charity where Betsy worked. Betsy had introduced us, and I knew instantly that she was someone special. I never felt the need to tell Grace about Lisa. She was no longer part of my life. The wedding was a beautiful ceremony followed by a lively reception. I knew I'd see Lisa there, but with no hate or anger left in my heart, I didn't worry about it. Instead, I focused on celebrating Betsy's happiness. Throughout the reception, I couldn't help but notice Lisa avoiding me. It was obvious she thought I might lash out again if she tried to approach me, given our history. I didn't blame her. I hadn't exactly been kind the last time we spoke. Just before Grace and I were about to leave, though, I decided to seek Lisa out. She was deep in conversation with one of her friends when I approached, and her face froze in shock as she spotted me. Her body language screamed that she was bracing for trouble. "Lisa," I said, looking her straight in the eye. I gently took both of her hands in mine. Her surprise only deepened. "I have to give you credit," I continued, my voice calm and sincere. "You raised one of the most amazing women I've ever known. Elizabeth is truly one in a million, and I'm certain she couldn't have become the incredible person she is without you being a loving mom. All the best to you." Before she could respond, I turned and walked away. Lisa remained frozen, standing there in stunned silence. When I reached Grace, she looked at me with curiosity. "I think Betsy's mom wanted to say something to you," she said. "She was reaching out her hand as you were walking away, and I think I saw her mouth the words, 'I'm sorry.'" "What could she have been apologizing for?" Grace asked, her head tilted in confusion. "No idea, babe," I replied casually, doing my best to sound nonchalant. I put a hand on the small of her back, gently steering her toward the door. "Maybe she thinks I didn't like the wedding cake." Grace chuckled, though she gave me a look that said she wasn't entirely convinced. Still, she let it go, and together we walked out of the ballroom, leaving the past exactly where it belonged, behind us.